Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
I'm confused. And I'm hoping Ashley, our guest, who you're going to introduce or have her introduce herself here in a minute, can help clarify me. I don't know. I asked her if she's an introvert. I don't know if I'm an introvert or an extrovert, Chad. I really don't. Because
You're
of a
an extrovert,
definition.
Bob.
Yeah, but I heard a definition of it one time that made me really reconsider whether I am or not. So maybe
Do you
we'll
get your
into that,
energy from people, or do you get your energy alone?
I am wiped out after we're around a lot of people.
That's not what I said. Do you get your energy from people, or do you get your energy alone?
I feel like in big audiences, I get my energy sucked away from me. The idea of showing up in front of an audience does excite me in some way, but like being in a room of a bunch of people and going around the room and walking out at the end of the night, I'm sucked dry. I don't have any energy left after that.
All right. I think that as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little more introverted because I want people to just go away and leave me alone a little bit.
That's because you're grouchy, you're an old man, get off my lawn, you damn kids. But
that could be. Yet way back when, and before we even get into today's episode, folks, you should go back and listen to episode 34 from season 2, where I had an opportunity to interview Matthew Pollard, who wrote a book about introverts. The Introvert's Edge is the book. And Matthew told me, once you're somebody, you're a somebody. Like, you don't change. That might be debated today. I don't know. We're setting all this up, and I think our guest might come on here, Bob, and might completely destroy everything we think, everything that we know.
I hope so.
That's why we do it at Win, Make, Give, right? We want to learn as well. So, Bob, you mentioned already, I'm going to have her introduce herself to the audience. Ashley, I don't like to read bios that people give. I want you to introduce yourself to the Win, Make, Give audience. Ashley Harwood, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. And I agree, bios are boring and dumb. So I'm the founder of Move Over Extroverts, which is a coaching and training company for introverts in business.
Okay. There's got to be a little bit more to your boring bio than that.
I move a lot. I was born and raised in Michigan outside Detroit and then spent almost a decade in Massachusetts. I'm currently in LA and I am very excited to move back to Massachusetts as soon as possible.
Now you tell us where did have you always known you're an introvert? I guess would be my first question. And why this idea, where did the business idea come from that you'd want to go out and coach other introverts to kind of tap into their best self to have success in business?
So your first question, no, I did not always know that I was an introvert. I figured it out by reading Susan Cain's book, Quiet. And that was about 5 years ago, something like that.
Wait a minute. Now, I've seen your picture on your website. You don't look old. Let's be real clear on that.
Thank you.
But you didn't know until 4 years ago that you were an introvert?
Maybe 5. But no, most of my life, I was presenting as an extrovert. That's what I thought I was, especially being in the real estate industry or in any industry that's very consumer facing and social. Like, you just kind of get thrown into these situations and you deal with it, and you don't always stop to think about, how is this affecting me and how can I best utilize my energy? And so, yeah, I was burning out. And what happened was I was so burnt out all the time and so anxious that I finally went to go see a therapist, and she was like, you should read this book. And it was the book Quiet, and I did. And then I was like, oh my God, this all everything in my life makes sense now.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning.
Okay.
Introvert, extrovert. Define. Everybody out there probably thinks, oh, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. And then here you are 5 years ago or so in your life, finally figuring it out yourself. Give our audience the differences, the definitions. Give us an overview on introverts versus extroverts.
So you hit it on the head, Chad. It's where your energy comes from. If you are energized by being alone, you're more on the introvert side. If you're energized from being around other people, you're more on the extrovert side. Now, where it gets complicated sometimes is we're all a combination of both. And we can, I do agree with Matthew. So he's a friend of mine. He's actually written 2 books now, a second one just about networking for introverts, which is
Yes,
awesome.
that's why we had him on the podcast. It was excellent. So.
Yeah. So I do agree that we're born a certain way. And if anyone's familiar with the DISC profile, I like to, it's similar to that, where if you have something really huge in your life that changes you, you might change, where you fall on that scale. But at the end of the day, we are who we are. And when we stop fighting that and we tap into where we are more naturally, that's where things get a lot easier and more pleasant.
Ashley, do you believe, hang on, Bob, because I want to see do you believe COVID is one of those huge impact things to people and might turn a bunch of extroverts into introverts because they've had to learn to get the energy from themselves?
I don't know if it turned people into introverts. However, I do believe that a lot of people realize that they are introverts because they'd never thought about it before.
So, Bob, after that definition, Ben is clearly an introvert. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody who knows Ben Kinney, he's an introvert. He's off re-energizing himself by himself. I mean, how many other people turn right and go across the country for, 60 days basically on their own and stuff like that, or go vanishing into the woods and off the grid like he does to recharge? I'm definitely an extrovert. I enjoy my quiet time with my wife. I enjoy quiet time at home. Yet, Bob, when we get together to record the podcast, that gives me energy. I look forward to that. That's why it's in the middle of the week for me on the schedule. Where are you?
I'm conflicted. I'm so conflicted on this. I think it's hard when you have a family, right? Like nothing more than I love my alone time. I almost live for it. And that's the time I get to think. I get to kind of plot and plan and to reflect.
Is it your energy though? Or do you get your energy from being with the boys? Do you get your energy when you're coming in and hanging out with us? Do you get your energy when you're getting on one of your webinars?
Maybe COVID made me realize I do need that, Chad, too. I'm conflicted. I don't know. Is there a test, Ashley? Is there like some because
yes,
I think this is so situational too. Right? Like my career has forced me to be in a position where I'm around a lot more people and up in front of an audience and large groups. And I don't, I probably could have taken another career path that I feel like would have developed the introvert side of me, right? I could have been a developer just as easily and found a lot of energy in being by myself and confined to try to, write some code that was going to change the world. Like, is this stuff fluid?
It is fluid. Couple things you mentioned. There is a test. I give a test when I teach classes, but I made that test up, so it's not very scientific. The more scientific test is 16personalities.com. It's a Myers-Briggs. So if anyone's interested, 16 personalities, that is the best test. It's free.
But that sounds like a test for schizophrenia. Is that a test for schizophrenia or is that an introvert?
Not so much. Although you can I've felt a little schizophrenic sometimes, like going from, one persona to another. And it is fluid and it is a scale. And there are people who are smack dab in the middle, and we call them ambiverts, like being ambidextrous.
Okay. So now there's a new term we're coming up with here.
I feel like she might have just given me an identity or something. Like speaking of therapists, I have my appointment tonight. So I'll share with my therapist that I think I might be an ambivert.
You might be. And you know what? It really doesn't matter. Okay. It matters only for you and yourself and how you are approaching your life and where you're spending your time. That's the only reason any of this matters.
Okay. So it's not a right or wrong answer, right? It's not better to be one or the other.
No.
But you would, I think, say that it's better to be in tune with who you are, because then you're going to move through the world in a way that doesn't suck your energy out of you, right?
Exactly. That's the key. That's why this is important. But there's no right or wrong answer. Some of the top agents and business owners and CEOs, Warren Buffett, presidents, past presidents, lots of people are introverts.
So I look, Chad, he gave you a hard time about talking about a particular industry. You and I, although Chad's been a part of lots, Chad, get out of here. We come from an industry, right? We come from an industry, and it's the real estate industry. And look, some of our listeners are a part of that industry. Lots of them are not. They're small business owners or entrepreneurs or these sorts of things. Help me understand, like 5 years ago when you had that kind of aha, like how did that change how you showed up to your job?
So it changed a lot of things I was doing. I took a hard look at all of my activities, and this applies not just for real estate. This applies for any business owner, any entrepreneur, because you have to be out there finding business. You have to be doing your lead gen, whatever that looks like. And that can look a lot of different ways. So for me, the changes were I worked fewer hours. I started taking more time off to just rest and not burn myself out, because I knew that if I continued down that path, I wasn't going to be good at what I was doing. I wasn't going to be serving my clients well, and it wasn't healthy. So I changed the way that I was finding clients. And then my business grew a lot because
give me an example of something you were doing before to find a client that was like more kind of extrovert based, that was sucking the energy out of you. And then give me an example of something you started doing that was more, akin with you being an introvert that was actually better for you.
Sure. So for me, cold calling was not my thing.
Okay. But you tried to do it because somebody had said, hey, this is a way to grow the business.
Yes. So I tried doing that for over a year, probably about a year and a half, not having any success with that. And I know that works for a lot of people, didn't work for me. So step one was giving myself permission to not do that anymore, and instead replace it with other activities. So the things that worked well for me that I enjoyed were more relationship building, one-on-one, joining networking events, and it's definitely a slower game. However, it was a lot more effective for me. And that still drained my energy. One other thing that I want to mention that's important here is there are a lot of things and people that we interact with and things that we do that are very enjoyable, and they can be a huge energy suck.
Like Chad. I enjoy being with Chad, but he is a big energy suck.
Wait a minute, aren't I usually the one making fun of you? Hang on a second.
I don't even enjoy being with you, Chad, so this is my time to pick on you. Normally you're the one picking on me in these things,
That's true. I'll
Ashley, you should know that this is normally Chad's giving me the business. So
that is
that's a good point, that sometimes there's things we enjoy that still are, like, as an introvert, they suck our energy. We're still tired when we get home, right?
Totally. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do them. It just means we need to be strategic about when they fall in the calendar. Because if you know going into something that you're going to be exhausted after, it's okay. Just plan for it.
You mentioned that you started working less, which was one way. So you, in theory, had more time by yourself, right? To re-energize as an introvert. What other things besides working less did you kind of lean into that really fed that introvert side of you? Because some of those tactics you suggest, they're not quite as extroverted aggressive, but they're still extra. Like doing a networking event is still something that an extrovert would probably excel at more, right? But what were some things that were exclusively like introverted that you were able to do beyond just like working less?
One of the biggest changes I made was taking a hard look at my calendar and deciding where to spend my energy, because I realized I have a finite amount of energy, just like a finite amount of time. And where is the highest and best place for me to spend that? Is it going to this networking event, or is it having coffee with this one person? Like sometimes it's as simple as making that decision and knowing that I'm not going to have the bandwidth to do both, for example. So it was working less hours and also making more strategic decisions with where I was spending my time to have the biggest impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I heard about you. You worked with my friend or something, right? Move over to extroverts. Like, I need help. I'm an introvert. I'm getting burned out. Like, how do you start with somebody? What does that look like?
So we start by assessing where they're at and what they're currently doing. And I take people through a couple exercises where we kind of list everything they're doing in their business and we rank how effective each thing is. And then we rank how much they rank how effective each thing is. And then they tell me how much they enjoy each thing. And then we make some decisions. I help them like decide which things to keep doing, which things to stop.
Is this I'm fascinated by just like tactically these sorts of things. Is this like so let's say I have 10 things I'm doing in my business. Am I ranking them 1 to 10? I enjoy this one the most and this one the least? Or am I ranking them all on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, yes. I like this a 7. I like this a 1.
Yes. So you're ranking each thing 1 to 10. How much do you enjoy it and how much does it work? So each thing is going to have 2 numbers.
So and then what you're just paring down things I don't like to do and leaning me into things that I do like to do, or is there like additional strategy kind of developed around those things I do like to do?
I mean, that's where it kind of starts. That's where it starts. And if there are things on the list, and there usually are, that are not working and they are making my client miserable, those are easy things to cross off the list altogether. And just let's take those resources, time, usually some money and energy, and reallocate them to the things that are, hopefully there are things on the list that are enjoyable and they're working. Now, the things in the middle, then we go and tweak those and maybe we add in some other things too if we need to.
All right. So I'm still here. I didn't vanish.
Hi.
I just know that when Bob's on a roll, sometimes it's just better to let Bob keep asking some questions because I need him to feel good about himself. But let's get on to generalities for people, because I want this to matter in their health world. I want this to matter in their relationships. I want this to matter in all of the areas of their life. Being an introvert or an extrovert is going to affect our energy at different times, different ways. So it doesn't matter. Yet you're speaking at it from the introvert's perspective as you talk here. Talk to us about, we've used the analogy many times of you wake up in the morning and hopefully your cell phone is completely charged. And through the day, when you get in your car, you plug it back in. When you get to your desk, you plug it back in because you always want to keep it as charged as you can. And when you wake up and your battery's at like 20% because you forgot to plug it in, how frustrating that gets and how draining a day that can be as you're chasing battery power. How does that apply to us as people? And how can we plug in to recharge? Because we don't literally get to go plug into the wall.
So I love this analogy so much. It's actually one that I use all the time. The exact same thing. We are phones. We have to plug ourselves into the wall. And so how this applies is a couple different ways. First and foremost is avoiding that scary red bar that says your phone's about to die. And we all feel that sometimes. Like I've felt that many times where my body and my energy is just like, you're about to crash. You need to do something. And if anyone's listening and they're in that spot right now, if you're feeling that, you know it, and it's important to take some action. And maybe the action is you need a day off, or you
Ashley, I thought though that they were listening to our podcast right now because 20 minutes ago they felt that way and then they turned the podcast on, Chad. Isn't that what just happened?
I hope so for some of them. I hope we are recharging them and giving them energy. Yet, Ashley, run me a list of things that maybe you find generalities, of course, because it's going to be specific to everybody. Bob's going to want to do different things than I'm going to want to do and that you're going to want to do and some of our audience are going to want to do. But what are some of those great tips you give for people to recharge specifically as they go through? You were just saying sometimes we need to just say, screw it, and take a day off, play hooky from work or from life or whatever it is. What are some other specific things we can do to keep our battery going up when it comes down, then going back up?
Right. So you're right. It is specific person to person. However, I've talked to a lot of people about this. And some of the more common things that always come up are spending time in nature, spending time doing any sort of exercise.
Pass.
Pass on the exercise.
I'll take care of yours, Bob. Don't worry.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you.
You know what I learned recently? Taking a walk counts as exercise.
Awesome. I'm down with that. I can do that.
We'll debate that on our 15-point plan.
Walk, Chad, where my heart rate gets up over XYZ beats per minute. Like we know.
Yes.
I took a walk this morning. It was a great exercise. I don't run.
What's something you do to just recharge your battery? Because I'll tell you, I'll sometimes just play a dumb game on my phone. Sometimes just turning my brain off and being able to say, I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to see if I can beat this level of Candy Crush or whatever the game's actually called that I'm playing. Sometimes that just gives me that little energy boost. What's something you do, Bob, that's short that would just give you that quick energy boost?
I've got a patio right outside. I mean, I guess it's to her point of getting out into nature. I've got a patio right outside my office here. In fact, that window you can see, Chad, in my shot here. If I walked right outside that window, there's a little patio out there. And look, it's Washington, so it's generally pretty rainy around here this time of year. But I'll just go stand out there, suck in some fresh air, look around at my neighbors' places and see if anybody's out. You know, if there's somebody out walking their dog, there's kind of this little park area across the street. I'll holler at that person across the street. So I probably am an extrovert. I probably am fine, Chad, fine. Like, right? but I'll just get outside.
Ashley, did he not just prove that extrovert is the way Bob leans with that comment?
All right. My wife would tell me the same thing.
The fifth.
Oh, there you go. Ashley, what's something you do personally that's just a quick, easy, not necessarily one of those generic, easy things? What's something specific to Ashley to recharge that battery?
I do all the things they tell you not to do in the business world, like taking naps and watching Netflix and reading fiction. And Chad, you said something really key, and that is turning the brain off. That's so for your listeners, ask yourself, what would help me turn my brain off? And that's something to try to recharge.
Interesting.
Yep.
That's a dangerous one for me because a lot of the things that I do to turn, maybe I've just trained myself this way. It's like after I put the kids to bed and my wife and I have a little bit of kind of us time together, that time before I go to bed is when I turn my brain off. And I feel like a lot of those things that I use to turn my brain off are like, the brain doesn't turn back on after those things, Ashley, right? So do you kind of have to learn how to be able midday to turn your brain off and then kind of turn it back on? I think I'd be worthless if I took a nap in the middle of the day.
I probably wouldn't do it during the day. It's about scheduling, right? I probably wouldn't do it in the middle of the day if you know you have something else to do that's important afterwards, unless you're at that really low battery level and you know you need that to get through the next thing.
Okay.
Right? So this is going to have a little bit of trial and error for people.
Sure.
You got to figure out what works for you. But in general, it's just being really self-aware of that energy level and not letting yourself get down too low. And then making sure that you have a really high level when you're about to have something important happen. Like if you're going to have an appointment or meet with a potential client or whatever it is in your life that's super, super important, how can you strategically place energizing activities right before that?
Okay. Now, back in episode 63, Bob and I talked about my system for building a calendar. Now, I've let Bob off the hook and I haven't asked him to send it to me every week for accountability to see if he's actually improving, working on it. Yet, talk to us about building a calendar as an introvert, as an extrovert, just identifying this. Give me some tips. How can I use building my calendar to keep my energy from peaking and valleying?
So it's going to go up and down regardless, your energy level. But to stay in that kind of nice middle ground or the upper levels, the easiest thing to do to start is to look at your calendar for the last couple weeks and make little notations on each thing. Like each thing in the calendar, did that drain you or replenish you? And just boom, 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 go down the list. And then you can start collecting data really for yourself and analyzing that and saying, okay, I'm seeing these patterns, these things drain me, these things replenish me. Then you can use that going forward.
And maybe if I I don't know. It might be, look, I'm a scatterbrain. It'd probably be hard for me to even go back 2 weeks and try to put myself like that. There's certain things you could easily be like, oh yeah, that drained me like that. But
Sure.
most of that stuff, I don't know that, but like, so in my head, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do for the next week. I'd go there and do little notations that said, okay, I just got done with that thing. Do I feel more or less energized? Less, right? I just got done with that thing. Do I feel more or less energized? So it doesn't have to be like, did we go backwards? We could do it for the next week or the next couple weeks. That's
absolutely.
a really smart suggestion.
Absolutely. And maybe if you're concerned about remembering, maybe you put a recurring daily phone reminder in the evening to say, oh, go back through the day and make these notations.
What else?
Okay.
Any other tips for building it? So we've gone back through our calendar and kind of figured out what's good and what's not. What else around kind of that idea of calendaring can help us be a little bit more effective as a person, I guess?
I mean, I'm a big proponent of taking days off. And I feel like most entrepreneurs in any industry struggle with this because there's a lot of guilt around it. And there's a lot of
not one of those people. Don't worry.
Shut up, Chad.
I'm actually surprised you're still here and not on a vacation in the middle of the episode, Bob.
Well, listen, there was the many years where I didn't take any, Chad. Like there was a lot, the active rain years, there wasn't a lot of vacations to be had. So I've definitely been in that trap before. And I think, and look, Ben is somebody that really helped reposition my mind on that kind of thing, that like we do need Ashley to get away to be a most effective version of ourselves when we're here. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I think it's like, to me, the vacation would be, if we're going to go back to your cell phone analogy, it would be like your battery's dying, right? It's dying. And every day you can charge it back up all the way. But as your phone gets old, all of a sudden that charge doesn't last quite as long, right? Mm-hmm. And if I'm somebody that's burning the candle at both ends, I'm never taking any vacations, I'm working 6 or 7 days a week, like I get to a point where even fully charged, I'm not as charged as I could be if I had a vacation, right? Or was a new phone.
I like that analogy, Bob. Nice add-on.
Yeah.
Well done.
I like it too. However, I want to tweak it because I personally have a very old phone and I'm proud of my old phone. So let's tweak it to be this software update.
All
right.
Okay.
Your software update. And if you really want to be fancy, you can go buy yourself a new phone. But I love my iPhone.
Wait. Okay. Ashley, you just said you have an old phone. What kind of phone? Like, what is it? How old is it?
It's an iPhone 6. It's the SE.
Oh, you beat me. I'm very good. Congratulations. So I just upgraded from an iPhone 8. I've been, I think, 5 years, right? So you've been on yours for 7 years. Does the 6 even run anymore? Because Apple was doing everything they could to shut my 8 down. Like they were attacking me, it felt like. So that's amazing.
It works. It has the button.
Yeah, that was probably one of the reasons.
Bob was missing the button at first, but here he is. Yeah. All right, so while we've been talking, I went to 16personalities.com and I filled out the survey. Folks, I want each and every one of you listening to go to 16personalities.com. Then I want you to come into Facebook and I want you to share the personality type that you are. And you can find us at our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/win, make, give. I am an STPA. It says entrepreneur, STPA. And this guy just looks cool standing here with his hair. I wish I had hair, his little sports bag. And he's giving you the thumbs up. And I'll put a little picture of my guy in our Facebook group when we post this episode so that you can share with us your personality type. Now, Ashley, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, every personality type that's out there. And what does this tell you? All I know is it tells me I'm 74% extroverted and I'm 24% introverted. So what Ashley was saying earlier, that's just proving the fact, folks, we're not all one or the other, because it's still telling me I have 26% of me that is introverted for how I interact with things. And there are going to be times that I'm going to be in that zone, not in the extroverted zone.
Right.
Chad, before I have something that I heard recently, and I want to see if Ashley has any experience with this or if this is totally bullshit. Or somebody told me, so I do, like at our company, I'll do a lot of things where I'm kind of leading a group of 10, 12, 20, 50 people, or I do these webinar things every week where it might be 200 or 300 people on there. And and this is probably another sign that I'm an extrovert, but I will ask a question of a big group of 200 people. I'll ask a question and say, does anybody have a question about that? And I'm capable of waiting about 2 seconds. I'm like, okay, no questions. Awesome. On to the next thing. And somebody grabbed me and pulled me aside recently and said, hey, when you do that, when you ask a question like that, you should wait 10 seconds, because if there's introverts in the crowd, they need that time. And I don't know, look, that part seems real to me. Like, you should wait to let that, but they the way they presented it to me was that an introvert needs time to kind of summon the courage to say that thing that's floating around in their brain. Is there any truth to that? And if there is, or if there's not, I guess in either case, what other things should we be on the hunt for kind of in the business world that where maybe, extroverts are kind of running over or not giving introverts the time to, participate in an amazing way. Like, I feel like I've probably spent a long career not letting people answer questions, where if I had always waited 10 seconds, I bet I would have gotten so much great feedback in my life that I totally missed out on.
Yeah, that's a very good point and question. I'm glad you brought this up, because it happens all the time. There is truth to it. I would say that it's not because introverts need to summon the courage. I would say we need to gather our thoughts. We tend, at least for me, I tend to not want to say anything until I know what I'm going to say. I don't want to talk just for the sake of talking. So,
wait, what do you mean? Are you saying
that's you're an extrovert yet again?
Saying something just for the sake of saying it? Okay, guilty.
So I will take a beat and collect my thoughts. Especially if it's in the middle of a webinar and there's 300 people, like, of course, the introverts are going to take a second to make sure they don't sound like an idiot in front of all those people. So yeah, for people who are running things like that, or teaching or training or doing anything in a group setting, it is good to give a little bit of time after a question, and maybe even, depending on how well you know the people and the type of setting, it might even be worthwhile to ask individuals what they think. If it's a smaller group and it would be appropriate to do so, maybe say, hey, Bob, what do you think about this? I would love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I have one particular guy in my head who works in our organization, super sharp. His name's Matt, super sharp, definitely an introvert. But he's somebody that you almost need to pull his thoughts out of him, So that's a really insightful comment that, like, you can't do that on a webinar with 300 people or something. But man, when I'm in a group with 12 of our colleagues, absolutely saying, hey, Matt, you're a little quiet over here. What do you think, man? I think, yeah, that's really, wow. That might be my aha from today. That's good stuff.
Love that you got an aha today, Bob. We're hoping that our audience is getting ahas as well. And we want you to keep sharing those, not only your personality type. We want you to come into our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/win-make-give, and continue to share your ahas as we go through each and every episode. All right, I got 2 more questions for you, Ashley.
Okay.
First one's probably going to be pretty easy. On behalf of Win, Make, Give Season 2, we are living up to that give title, and we are giving to a charity that you want to select today as a thank you for you joining us. So what is the charity organization that we're going to get to make a donation to thanks to this episode?
That is very wonderful and generous. Thank you. It is called Employment Options, and it's in Marlborough, Massachusetts. I'll send you all the details. It's an organization that helps adults with mental illness, helps them get jobs, and that's why it's called Employment Options. So I've been a donor. I've sat on their board. It's just a great group of people.
We look forward to it. All right. We will make that donation. And let me ask you the last question I have for you. What's the one thing that we didn't ask you, it didn't come up, that you're sitting here going, someone asked me because I really want to tell the audience blank? Is there something still sitting there on the tip of your tongue that you want to share with our audience?
We covered a lot of good things. The only other thing I would say is, for all the introverts listening who feel like maybe you don't have what it takes to be a leader or a business owner or a billionaire someday, if that's what you desire, you can absolutely do all those things and probably do it very, very well, and maybe even do it better than some extroverts.
Oh, Bob, you going to take that?
Ooh.
Wait, am I
better than extrovert?
No, I didn't even hear that. I know she said it, but it went right in one ear and right out the other. So I was still thinking about becoming a billionaire. So
yeah. Yet again, another sign of Bob being an extrovert, paying attention to himself, not what was going on there, Ashley. We appreciate
I'm over here taking the 16 personalities test, Chad.
Well, get on it, Bob, because we want to see your results as well. Ashley, we appreciate you taking the time joining us today, folks. We hope you've joined us in our Facebook group. We hope you share this episode with some introvert out there in your world saying, oh, I can't do that. It'll never work for me. Believe me, we look again and again at someone like Ben Kinney, who's an introvert, and look at everything this man has done. Folks, if he can do it, come on, right? We can all go out there and we can do it, whether we're challenged as an introvert or an extrovert, to make it work. We thank you for taking the time, Ashley. We thank you, audience, for taking the time. And until our next episode, as always, do good.